day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today. My name is Johanna. I'm from the UN Innovation Network. And today we'll be talking about digital transformation. Apologies, I need to mute something. We're talking about digital transformation. But before we get into that, I'd just like to take a quick moment to talk to you about the Quintet of Change. And when I say talk to, I actually want to ask you a question. And I would like to know from you how much you actually know about the Quintet of Change. Do you know what it is to start with? It's a very simple yes or no question. Looking forward to hearing from you. And I think colleagues who join UN webinars more regularly will have a little bit of an advantage here. So take your pick. Okay, I see everyone's answered, and we have a split of about 18% of you know what the Quintet of Change is, and 80% don't know what it is yet. So I'm really glad I asked. I'll be telling you just now what it is. I had planned to ask you a trick question in terms of which area is not part of the Quintet up front as well, but given that so few of you are familiar with it, I don't think that makes much sense. So can we please go to the next slide, and let's spend a moment just talking about the Quintet of Change. That is a term coined by the Secretary General in his report on our common agenda, which sets out his vision for his next term in office. And the Quintet outlines key capabilities that the SG believes are critical enablers to help the UN transform into what he calls UN 2.0, a more agile, a more efficient organization that is ready to face the challenges of our times and future times that we might not even be aware yet. And as the name suggests, 5 core capabilities: data, analysis and communications, innovation and digital, strategic foresight, performance and results orientation, and behavioral science. And the SG thinks that all organizations need to invest in these 5 capabilities to get ready to face these new challenges. So really happy to be talking today about one of these Quintet areas, and that is digital transformation. And of course, digital is such a core enabler for the UN, both in terms of how we work with beneficiaries and serve them, making these offerings better, helping governments better, but also in our internal administration. And then it can also revolutionize the way we work. So hugely important area, and really looking forward to learning more about it today. Regular UN webinar participants will know that we already hosted a webinar with UNDP on their strategy last year, and I'm specifically looking forward to learning why they've launched a new strategy this year, why was it needed, what UNDP has learned from this new strategy, what can we learn from that, what has changed, and what's coming. As usual, we'll be leaving plenty of time for Q&A, and we'll also try and take your questions throughout the webinar. I think on the next slide, you'll see where you can pop these questions. Exactly, there's a little box at the bottom of Zoom. Put your questions there, vote on questions that you find interesting, and help us prioritize. And because it always is the most popular question of any webinar, yes, we're recording the webinar. On the next slide, you see our webinar library with a link. I'll also be sharing it via email, so you can access the slides and a recording there afterwards. Enough of logistics. I'm now happy to introduce you to our presenters for the day. We are joined by Rob. He's the Chief Digital Officer at UNDP, and also happens to be the co-chair of the UN Innovation Network. Welcome, Rob. It's your chance to come on video now. So Rob leads digital transformation at UNDP and tries to help, again, as we said, beneficiaries and stakeholders leverage it better. And later on, we'll also be hearing from Guiderails. He's the digital innovation and scaling specialist in Rob's team. And as part of that role, he's constantly looking for entrepreneurs with good digital solutions that can help UNDP country offices. And Guyan Perez, he's the head of data in Rob's team and the digital team as well. And I believe he also co-leads the implementation of the data strategy at UNDP. So thanks to all of you for joining us today. We're looking forward to hearing from all of you. But first of all, Rob, I'm going to hand over to you for an introduction to the new strategy.
Thank you so much, Johanna, and it's great to be with you all, and greetings to wherever you are and whichever time zone you're in. And apologies up front that we have a kind of a manual today. I assure you that within our team, our digital team at UNDP, we have probably 60% female representation. Just happens to be the topics today are being covered by Guyan and Mike. So it's great to be with you and tell you a little bit about UNDP's new digital strategy, which covers the period of 2022 to 2025. And as Johanna said before, we did a presentation last year on the strategy, the predecessor strategy to this one. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we switched over to a new strategy and what the new strategy actually sets out in terms of directions for the organization. So just a quick history here. UNDP's digital work did not start with the new strategy or a strategy that we created in 2019, which is the first digital strategy that we had. UNDP's work, like many agencies, has been touching on the digital space in many different countries around the world for decades in the case of UNDP. And some of the work in, for example, Estonia, like the Estonia e-Governance Academy, which some of you may have run across, were actually the result of a UNDP project. So these things have been going on for at least 20 years. But what UNDP didn't have was a systematic or coherent way to approach digital as an entire organization. And with the new strategic plan from new then in 2017 strategic plan with the new administrator Achim Steiner at the time, it set out a strategy around how to make sure that UNDP is future oriented. That was then complemented by the 2019 digital strategy. So that was the first digital strategy. That one was specifically done on a short time frame because what we wanted to do was a quick burst of activity when it came to digital. So it actually expired at the end of 2021, which is why we needed to think about a new strategy. Now, the timing is very good because UNDP brought in a new strategic plan to cover the 4-year period 2022 to 2025. And it made it an ideal time to bring in a digital strategy that covers the same period and directly complements the new strategic plan, which was even more forward oriented, future oriented than the previous one. So that sort of gives you a little bit of a rundown of why we sort of evolved the way we did when it comes to digital. Now, the digital strategy is broken into 3 parts. There's a sort of section around guiding principles and some information about UNDP's value proposition. Then there's the piece about the actual strategy itself and where it sets out in terms of objectives and outcomes. And then there's a 3rd section which gets into implementation approach for the organization. I'm not going to cover everything in detail. I'm going to give you just sort of the highlights of these 3 sections. And then Mike and Guyan are going to go into sort of different pieces of work that we're doing to support the implementation of the strategy. So this is not a comprehensive presentation this morning. We just don't have time for that because there's so much going on. But we will try to cover the basics, and then you can find more information on the website or feel free to reach out to us as well. Okay, for UNDP, digital is considered to be an enabler of the entire strategic direction of the organization. So in UNDP, digital is not considered to be the realm of management or operations services. Digital is as important for the programmatic side of the organization as it is for the internal systems. And in UNDP, we have 6 signature solutions, which you see on the left here, that essentially represent our I'd hesitate to call them business lines, but for all intents and purposes, these are our thematic areas of support. And then we have these 3 enablers that really help to empower and enable all of those signature solutions. So digital is one of them, strategic innovation is another, and development financing is another. Now, I won't go into detail on that. They might be worth actually a future presentation to UNIN around the UNDP's approach to strategic innovation, because it is quite different than a lot of what we see across the system, but I'm not going to get into that today. I'm going to stay focused on how digital is seen as an important enabler for the strategy of the organization. Now, a couple of important points of differentiation between the previous digital strategy that we had and the current one. We did not have a set of guiding principles in the previous strategy. So, but we felt that we needed to include that in this one. And the reason is that as we got into our digital work, particularly from the programmatic side of things, we realized that we needed to have some corporate framing around the kinds of approaches that we take toward our digital work. And so this is where we're able to kind of layer in what we feel is important about our digital approach. So we put human rights at the center of our digital work. We promote inclusive and gender sensitive approaches in our digital work. We follow the global standards and frameworks that are out there. These include things like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but they also include the frameworks that are out there, like the Secretary General's Digital Cooperation Roadmap and the new technology strategy that was done a couple of years ago, and now the common agenda as well, which, as Johanna was saying at the beginning of this meeting, the common agenda makes reference to digital in terms of reclaiming the digital commons and looking at digital rights and things like that, but also the quintet of change, how digital is able to kind of power some of the other changes to our organizations. So following all of those global frameworks and things. Advocating for open digital standards and open data is important to us, that we work to strengthen local digital ecosystems, not just working with global tech players or tech players from the north. And then that we're really taking a strategic partnership approach, because we know that UNDP is not capable of doing all this alone. We need to build a digital development ecosystem as well, and really to be an important part of that for the purpose of supporting our programs. Okay, so that's sort of in the guiding principles part of the strategy. And then we kind of get into what is our driving vision around digital for the organization. And what we decided after quite a lot of thinking about this was that our driving vision for digital is to create a world in which digital is an empowering force for people and planet. So that's really the rally call around the strategy, but for UNDP overall in its use of digital. And that then breaks down into a couple different objectives. So as I mentioned before, the strategy, the digital strategy for UNDP covers both the programmatic / external facing side of the organization that you see here in the blue, as well as the operational or management systems, the internal technology systems of the organization. UNDP has very purposely taken that comprehensive approach. Not all organizations are doing that or will do that or need to do that, but this is where we felt that we really needed to tackle both of those sides. On the programmatic side, we have a couple of different objectives. The first one is around how do we ensure that we are embedding digital thinking, digital context, digital tools, and digital approaches into all of our signature solutions, those ones that I referred to before on the strategic plan slide. It is about looking across all of those areas: poverty eradication, governance, crisis resilience, and so on, and thinking through how might we improve and amplify our development outcomes if we're leveraging digital in a strategic and tactical way. So that's why I say it covers everything from looking at how digital is shaping the context of our work in those areas, to how we can develop digital solutions and tools and innovations that can be brought to bear on that. And then the second area is something that is totally new to this strategy as well, which has emerged over the last couple of years of our work with governments, particularly as a result of the COVID pandemic. Governments have turned to digital approaches, digital solutions themselves, to look at how they can amplify their own digital and development outcomes. And so we've developed a whole of society approach to digital transformation that takes a sort of approach toward building inclusive and resilient digital ecosystems. And this is something that I'm not going to take a lot of time to get into. Frankly, it could be a whole webinar on its own to talk about how we approach governments, how we work with them on assessing their digital readiness, how we help them build out strategic plans, or rather digital strategy plans that cover a whole of society level, or how do we support them across these different pillars in the digital ecosystem that we feel needs to be there. What the most important thing about this to take away is that the reason why UNDP does this is because we want to ensure that digital is being leveraged in a way that is inclusive and beneficial to people, to the SDG outcomes, and it's really putting a rights-based approach and a people-centered approach at the center of thinking when it comes to how do we put digital into, whether it be government systems or building out whole ecosystems. That's really important to us. And that distinguishes us from, say, McKinsey or Deloitte or somebody who might come along and just help a government digitize, if you know what I mean. The final objective area is around transforming the internal systems of UNDP. We had something similar in the previous strategy as well. This work is well underway in UNDP. We're changing out our new, or putting in place a new sort of set of foundational cloud-based digital architectures. There's a new ERP system, which is going to be Oracle Cloud. That's almost ready to go live. We are using a Salesforce-based platform for a number of other solutions. And we have a ServiceNow-based platform for service ticketing. It's really going to radically change the architecture of the organization. But it's not just the technology architecture, it's also the need to build digital culture in the organization. So a lot of digital capacity building work. It's about building a network of digital champions, about changing our job profiles and descriptions. It's about layering in digital across our thinking around how do we handle people and the workforce of the organization. And then finally, ensuring that we're able to use data and knowledge as the strategic assets that they are. And Guyan is going to get into the UNDP's approach to the data strategy, or our own data strategy, in just a second. And so the strategy puts out a few outcomes that we wish to achieve over the next 4 years. So in the next 4-year period, we aspire that UNDP will become a global leader of digital development practice, and that's based on our country experience across the world. That we will be a global voice of authority and a credible voice of authority on the use of digital technology for development, not only, as I said, for using it as tools, but also understanding where are the challenges and risks related to digital that we need to be aware of. Thirdly, the third one on the programmatic side, that we want to be ensure that we are a trusted partner and a convener and an integrator across the different sectors. This is not just the UN system, but this is linking public sector and private sector actors so that we're able to really work on these inclusive digital ecosystems and approaches like digital public infrastructure, for example. Then on the operational side, a few outcomes here that we aspire to as well: having that agile and innovative culture with a digitally competent workforce, ensuring that we have the fit for purpose digital architecture and systems in place, as well as processes, and then leveraging our data and knowledge. Now, that's all in the second part of the strategy. The third part of the strategy, and I'm only going to hit a couple of highlights on this, goes through, okay, how is UNDP going to actually approach doing all of this? And one of the more important elements of the third part is that we situate ourselves on a kind of maturity scale here. So we note that in 2019, when we started our digital journey, we were in this sort of far left box around opportunistic. And what I mean by that is what I was saying about our countries were using digital. We were often involved in digital things, digital tools, solutions, etc., but we weren't doing that systematically or coherently. With the digital strategy that was brought in 2019, that helped us kind of evolve in terms of maturity to become what we call a sort of hybrid, where we have built a strong central digital team that is really driving this transformation. That is the Chief Digital Officer's team that I look after, and we really are a transformation team for the organization that helps to drive and partner with the organization to make sure that we're driving forward on these changes. But we don't think that this should be the state that we're in forever. We actually want to reach, by 2025, this sort of embedded state where the Chief Digital Officer's team can step back and perhaps focus on a few things that are needed in terms of centers of excellence around the organization and different kinds of support. But by and large, the organization is able to really keep the digital work in an agile and innovative way, keep it going on a sustained basis. So this is an important part of that last part of our strategy to situate us on the kind of evolution. And then finally, and this is my last slide, it sets out also where are the roles and responsibilities for different parts of the organization. I know a lot of you have come into contact with the accelerator labs of UNDP. they are a critical part of UNDP's digital strategy, because they are often doing the on-the-ground experimentation and innovation with different kinds of digital solutions. They're an important signaling network. They're really able to kind of both kind of source ideas and trends, as well as become a force of scaling when we find solutions that work. Our country office backbone, of course, we have a few global policy centers around the world that focus on different things in the policy and thought leadership area, but they're engaged in digital. And of course, our regional bureaus and our global headquarters teams as well. So all of this is in the strategy. And with that, Johanna, I'm going to pause. I think that you might want to go for a quick Q&A. I haven't been able to monitor the Q&As as I was talking, but I'm going to stop sharing just for a second. And then you tell me how you'd like to proceed before we move on to Guyan and Mike.
Thank you, Rob. That sounds great. Thanks for the introduction. Really good to learn more about the strategy and the three elements and different aspects underneath it. Before I take a couple of questions that have come in for you, I actually wanted to launch a poll that we had planned at the beginning. And I'd like to know from colleagues here if you have a digital strategy in your organization. So launching that now, just for a little bit of comparison. And Rob, you can get ready because I'm going to ask you the second question on challenges before handing that to our colleagues. So let's take a moment. Everyone who's joined regularly know we have a policy. We don't close polls before they hit 75%. So if you zoned out temporarily, this is your chance to come back. Does your organization have digital strategy? And Rob, while colleagues are answering this, you mentioned that you want UNDP to be an integrator and build like an inclusive digital ecosystem. Obviously, that is music to my ears. Everything inclusive and ecosystem is exactly what we're trying to do at UNIN. How are you trying to do this? How are you, how are you being this integrator? How do you honor the commitment to do digital in partnership and not by yourself?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the realization that when you look at that sort of circular diagram that I had, there is no way that one agency or one actor can cover all of that stuff. So by the nature of what we've encountered when it comes to looking at digital ecosystems, we know that what we want to set up is a kind of an ecosystem platform. This is not a platform, not a UNDP platform, but an ecosystem platform that would happen at a national level that partners could plug into. And one of the, and we've been working on this in, well, about 15 countries at the moment when we've been looking at this. What does the whole of society transformation actually look like? Where does the private sector fit in, both startups and established networks? Where does academia fit in? Where do the citizens fit in, and so on? So it's about getting the right level of strategic thinking around this, which is, I think, something that UNDP can help contribute with the government as well as across the UN system on establishing that idea, and then making almost like the docking station for others to kind of bring in different efforts. And again, it's not something UNDP controls. It's something that the government will ultimately have responsibility for, but we want to make sure the government is thinking strategically and not in a fragmented, isolated way, which we often see, actually.
Very nice. That sounds good. And by, I guess, putting the government in the driving seat, you're making it easier for others to join the collaboration because it's not owned by someone else. It's a government-owned platform.
Yeah.
I'm going to admit defeat on my poll and accept that we're going to close at 70%, but I'll share with you briefly that we have 50% of you say that you have a digital strategy. So that's great news, and 30% don't. I expect digital strategy development will be coming your way in the coming weeks and months. I have a question in the Q&A box for you, Rob, from Vic Batia, and it links to another poll that we want to launch, and I'd invite you to reflect on the poll as well as you're answering the question. And it is, what are the biggest obstacles your organization faces with regards to digital transformation? So you guys are a little bit further down the road, maybe reflecting on what were the challenges in early stages and what are the challenges that you are foreseeing now. Any thoughts on that, Rob?
Sure. So you want me to answer that while the poll's going on?
Yes, please.
Yes, and by the way, I'll try to answer some of these other questions in the Q&A box over text as we go forward on this. There's some really good questions there. Key challenges. I mean, you've got a lot of them here, But at the end of the day, this is a transformation change process that organizations have to go to. And the main resistance and challenge with any process of transformation comes from trying to get people who are used to doing things in a certain way to do things in a new way and think about things in a new way, adopt a new mindset. So at the end of the day, yes, we have challenges with our IT infrastructure at the country level, and and we certainly have the digital skills deficit and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about how do you make sure people are understanding the basic imperative for change around digital. And for us, we started this work in 2019 before the COVID pandemic hit, and you could feel initially in the organization, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding about what digital really offered, because most people think, thought maybe, but in some cases still think that it's a matter of, well, I'm going to take what I do now and I'm going to build a little app and it's going to be a lot better. Well, I mean, that's not, yes, that's possible. But at the end of the day, the digital thinking digitally is about understanding how the context of development is being fundamentally reshaped by the development of fast-paced digital technologies in the world, and ensuring that your organization stays relevant to be supporting our partners as they encounter those changes in context. And UNDP and its administrator, Achim Steiner, said very early on, even before the COVID pandemic, that we either are going to go digital or we are going to go out of business. And that the COVID pandemic made that even more clear. And so I think from the leadership vision, kind of burning platform that Achim set, to the sort of heat that our people on the ground feel from their partners who need support in digital in all sorts of different ways, this has helped us kind of move the organization along. And we're still squeezing out people in the middle of those two groups that are a little bit skeptical or a little bit slow, or they just don't really get this whole thing, but we're really working on it. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, all these things are challenges, but that's the biggest central challenge that we face.
Thank you, Rob. And I think colleagues who are listening, they very much agree with you. The top answer that came in our polls, 28% said a lack of a clear vision or strategy, and then also the lack of understanding of how digital intersects with the development work. 20% said yes, that is definitely one of the key challenges we're facing.
Yeah, and I noticed, just to jump in, I noticed that in addition to that, the lack of digital skills. So I would say, that's our big challenge, is moving the organization and dealing with that mindset and resistance. Second to that, now where we are, our biggest challenge is now relevant digital skills and capacity. How do we get the people we need on the ground with the right profiles that are able to support the work that we know now that we need to do?
Excellent. Thank you. I want to maybe just take one question quickly, Rob. And actually, you said you saw a couple of good ones. I want to give you the choice. Do you have one that you thought was particularly interesting or doesn't come so often that you'd like to take before we hand over to your colleagues?
I would say, well, there's too many here.
They're coming up.
But the
resources available for implementation, potentially.
Sorry, which one did you mention?
What kind of resources are made available to implement and enable the strategy?
Right. Yeah, I can deal with that one quickly, and I'll try to answer these other ones as we go. Resources. Well, it required an initial investment from the administrator in terms of making sure that there was some corporate budget available for driving the sort of setting up the overall change, starting the transformation process, and so on. As we've gone along, though, we've been able to raise resources from extra budgetary resources from donors who are funding different pieces of work. So there continues to be a bit of the kind of corporate investment, but that is actually shrinking over time. And what we're doing is being able to sustain our effort now by donors who are excited about the change, see the difference it's making, and want to fund different kinds of projects and programs around that.
So see, it's interesting. You read it as financial resources. I read it as support resources. I think Valerie may have meant the
Oh,
other way, how
okay.
you answered it.
So,
But I
well,
think we'll also have Guyan and Mike talk about how you
yeah,
are systematically supporting. So maybe we'll use that as a segue to invite the rest of your
sure.
team to come and share about Digital X and the data strategy. And I think Digital X, Mike, I think you're going first. And with that, Rob, I'm going to say thanks for now. And we'll see you back later, time permitting. And in the meantime, please, by all means, feel free to answer questions live in the Q&A box, or we can also later on put them on our Teams channel for answers there. And with that, Mike, welcome you to come on video.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. Nice to see you again, and Rob, thanks so much. So hello, everyone. My name is Mike Rios. I'm based in Cambodia, and I lead a program called Digital X with a few teammates in UNDP CDO. So Digital X is what we call a Partnerships for Scale program, and we're helping innovative tech for good scale globally. So that can be tech, digital products, digital services. And this is our second iteration of Digital X. So thanks to the funding by the government of Japan, we had a first round of Digital X, which was ran more like I would say, a traditional accelerator, looking for innovative solutions that are scaling, that we could support and help vulnerable populations in times of COVID. And how we're evolving Digital X now is, rather than running an accelerator on our own, we're asking, how can we partner with other accelerators out there, other accelerators in UNDP and other accelerators in UN agencies, external local accelerators, as well as foundations, and really asking, okay, what's the best digital solutions that you have? What are already scaling, perhaps nationwide or in multiple countries? And how can we connect those bright spot solutions, those ready to scale solutions, with the needs of governments and the needs of UNDP? And so for Digital X, this round, we're more like the matchmakers to connect all those players and solutions. So that's why I'm really excited to talk to you all today, because I know there's probably some people in this crowd specifically that know of some digital solutions that are doing great work, and we want to talk to you. So diving in, Digital X, the way it's working, on April 20th, we will be launching a round of DX Global Challenges. So these are based off the needs expressed by governments and UNDP Global Policy Network. And we will be running various themes. Right now we have 4 thematic areas. There might be more by April 20th, around health, around gender, around crisis response, and nature, climate, and energy. And so teams can be social enterprises, nonprofits, UN created digital solutions, universities. I saw there was a question about university. Any group with a digital solution can apply to these DX global challenges. And the selected or vetted solutions will be placed in a DX solutions catalog. And we'll take this catalog and present it to governments and UNDP countries around the world. And that's where the matchmaking comes in. So we'll actively matchmake teams from the solutions catalog that have these solutions with the UNDP country offices who are interested to partner. And we will support in creating concepts or projects together on how they can implement and scale these solutions further, and then provide technical and funding support. We're finalizing now, but what we're hoping is to be up to $100,000 for every solution. So the value add for digital solution providers is that this is really a chance to work with UNDP, with governments and the partners that we have in 170 countries where UNDP is operating. So potentially through these types of partnerships, we want to impact more lives in more countries. We are also supporting, there's a large, Rob had mentioned this in our digital strategy, to become a leader in digital public goods. If you aren't sure where that is, what that is, I'd recommend you Google it. Really a new movement, and we want to bring more social enterprises and more UN developed solutions to become digital public goods. And we'll also provide tailored support as needed. So this might come in the form of mentorship or impact measurement, deep technical expertise, et cetera. And then, as I said, funding opportunities. So the funding will go through UNDP country offices to support scaling these bright spot solutions globally, or supporting to become digital public goods. And in terms of the projects that we supported in the past, again, we're looking for really innovative, proven, underlining proven and ready to scale solutions here that bridge the digital divide and promote human security. And so we're not funding early stage concepts or concept notes or early stage ideas, but really solutions that have scaled in at least one country. So for example, we partnered with a nonprofit, Give Directly. They use AI and mobile phone data and satellite data to identify and send government assistance or cash transfers to those most in need. So it could be people that have lost their jobs due to COVID, could be people in climate disasters, and the system's active in Togo, Uganda, Bangladesh, and now we're helping to explore in Nigeria, DRC, and Malawi. This project has already helped millions of people. Additionally, Balotech is a social enterprise, for-profit social enterprise from Kyrgyzstan, and that is a web app that teaches you the basics of coding through gamification. They've just had a programming Olympics with about 50,000 youth actively competing in these Olympics from countries around the world. And UNICEF is exploring a rollout of this platform in 22 countries. And then Meekin is a machine learning platform. It's kind of like Pinterest meets CAPTCHA, if you know CAPTCHA. It's a machine learning platform. It helps CSOs fight misinformation in local languages. It's active in Myanmar, Sudan, and Sri Lanka. And all three of these projects are looking to become digital public goods now as well, which is quite interesting. So how can you get involved? So we'd love for you all, if you have a digital solution, if you're leading a digital solution, or you know someone who is, please refer them to us or apply for a DX Global Challenge. As I said, they'll be launching April 20th. Currently, we have challenges in crisis response, nature, climate, energy, health, and gender, and we might have more. Again, UN teams, social enterprises, nonprofits. I should add universities. I'll add this afterwards, can apply. But again, we only accept proven solutions, proven meaning ideally have scaled nationwide already in at least one country. We will not accept concept notes or early stage solutions. And secondly, a way you could help is if you know any accelerator programs or digital programs or foundations that are interested to partner with DigitalX, or whether that's through funding or through maybe they have a number of graduates in their program or cohorts that they might be able to recommend people to apply to the challenges. We'd love to hear from you. And that's my email below. So please reach out if you're interested to connect. And thank you so much. And I will pass to Guyan to continue. Or Johanna, I don't know if you have if you want to.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Over
okay,
to
great.
Guyan. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. My name is Guyan Pires. I'm with the Chief Digital Office as well, and I co-lead the implementation of data strategy in UNDP, which I'm going to talk about next. So Mike, if you can move to next slide, please. Now, back in April 2020, the Secretary General and the Executive Committee approved the UN Data Strategy, and it puts data at the heart of what we do at UN, but also have a clear vision and an ambition for the UN when it comes to data. Also, it provides a blueprint for other agencies to follow as well. So for us at UNDP, the journey for the data strategy was not very different from the digital strategy. It's not like we didn't do anything on data before the strategy. There were a lot of initiatives happening on data, but they were happening in silos. And obviously, this created a privacy and confidentiality risk. But at the same time, we've realized certain two teams have purchased the same data set in certain instances as well. So there was no value creation from what we were doing. This challenge created an opportunity for us to create a long-term vision, enterprise-wide UNDP data strategy. Around the same time, the first digital strategy was approved in UNDP. The IT strategy was approved with the at UNDP. So closely aligned with these two strategies, we developed a long-term strategy for UNDP when it comes to data to enable data-driven decision-making. To make UNDP, the goal was to leverage data as a strategic asset in UNDP and make UNDP a data-driven organization. Next slide, please, Mike. Now, UNDP's data strategy is primarily focused on three pillars, as we call it: governance, people, and technology. And we use Guiderails, partnerships, and data architecture as cross-cutting enablers across these pillars. I'll talk about each of these pillars. Now, on governance, Our approach is a value-driven approach. What that means is governance is no longer a barrier if you want to innovate with data at the local level. Instead, we will support you with your queries, with guidance on how you can approach your data project. How we do that is through a set of guide rails. I will go into detail on guide rails in an upcoming slide, but these guide rails becomes your first line of support, providing answers to common questions like how to use, which map to use, is there a standard country list, how can I collect data, I'm collecting data, what should I be aware of, things like that. And if that first level of support is not sufficient or there is an exception, we have created a clear escalation path in the organization, going all the way up to a data governance group, a very senior representation in the organization, making those decisions for you. And this data governance group has a direct line to the UN data governance group as well. So on governance, we have created this structure, but a very value-driven governance process. And on the people side of things, we are promoting a very strong data culture in UNDP, and we do that by first building our capacity in UNDP through trainings, webinars. We have a basic data training course which sets a baseline for everyone at UNDP, and on-demand training courses available. And also we have a regular webinar series called Data Thursdays every Thursday at 8 a.m. New York time, where we pick a topic and discuss about that topic, bring in external experts, bring in UNDP's own examples into that. So that's a regular webinar series that we do when it comes to capacity building in UNDP. Also, we encourage hiring data capabilities, new data capabilities into teams and country officers as well. We have seen more and more of this happening now. And what we have, we've adapted the UN Secretary General's templates all the way from G5 to P5 on these data profiles, data scientists, data managers, data analysts. They are available as templates for teams to use as well. And in the next pillar, what we have done under technology is earlier, if you bring in data talent, it took about a month for onboarding, took about a month to get access to systems. And the practice was to get a consultant in your data project, and probably the project happens in their laptop or somewhere else, but no one knows. So instead of that, unify that in a central data architecture, which is running on Microsoft Azure right now, but it also has open source technologies like Databricks and CCAN. Also, we are moving towards self-service architecture. What that means is you no longer need to have understand the underlying technology to do your data work. It's all drag and drop. If you want to scrape some data from somewhere, if you want to connect to an API, if you want to do combine data sources, it's all drag and drop, very easy to do, and it's self-service. And also when it comes to visualizations, we've kept it very flexible as well. We have Power BI, Tableau, and a tool called Flourish available to the entire organization. And machine learning and AI capabilities are built into the technology that we have as well. Next slide, please. Now, how do we make value from the enablers that we have done in the strategy? How do we make value from the investments we have made? So one such strategic initiative is the Data Futures platform that we have on data.undp.org. This is an open platform and you can access this as well. This is an effort to bring those previously siloed initiatives under one umbrella. And it is organized around the socioeconomic response pillars on the website. And also it is organized under there is a page for each country that we work in as well. And there are some interesting analysis like the vaccine equity dashboard that you see on the screen. This previously may have been a 200-page report. Instead, now we are taking a data-driven approach to tell our stories. And there are similar interesting analysis on the site, like temporary basic income, school closures during COVID, and also at country level, the socioeconomic impact assessments we are doing, we are publishing them at country level as well. And there are many data points we are connecting, including non-traditional data in each country as well on this website. So that is the vision for Data Futures platform. And Mike, if you move one more slide. Next is, I said I will go into details on these data guide rails. Now, we have data principles in UNDP as well, which acts as that North Star for everything that we do on data. And with that, and also the policies we bring together under what we call data guiderails. Now, this is not policy, but guiderails, which provides you that first level of support in your data project. It covers the entire data life cycle. That is from data collection to from data injection, how do you store data, and also when it comes to data sharing and publishing as well, this covers a wide array of areas. Mike, if you can move to the next slide. Now, if you can read the small print on the screen, it goes into details of types of data, bias mitigation. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see the granularity of the topics that we are going into in this. Now, even this is a 160-page document, and no one is going to read 160 pages before or during their data project. So what we are doing is breaking this down to the smallest possible component and attaching context and keywords around it. So, and creating an AI-based chatbot. So if you're doing a data project, or if you have a question, you can have an intelligent chat with the chatbot, and it will direct you to the exact area of this 160-page document where you can refer to. And this is what we call almost like a wiki, because this is a living document. We will keep on updating it as and when policies change, as and when policies change within UNDP and outside UNDP. We will keep on updating this, and this acts as that first level of support for UNDP. And I saw a question somewhere when Rob was presenting, do you work with IT on standards? Yes, there will be digital standards coming up as well, and we are very closely working with IT on these guiderails as well, on how to use the technology, how to use it properly as well. Mark, next slide. Mike, if we can move to next slide, please. Oops, there was one more slide. Yes, data collaboration at local level. Now, this is a project that we are doing in collaboration with GIZ, creating a good practice toolkit for national level data and innovation. And there was another question about how we take Accelerator Labs input. And this is one of the projects where we will use Accelerator Labs input on local level data innovation and pilot this in 2 countries where Accelerator Labs are present, and provide the toolkit as a digital public good for everyone. And we will also nurture a community of practice around this, and also create a training course on the ITU website on local level data collaboration. So that's about it from my end. I'm looking forward to the questions. Thanks, everyone. Mike, we can move to the next slide.
I think that's the last slide, right? Exactly. There's the information on the digital strategy again. We'll share that with you via email as well, but in case you want to take a note, now is your chance. And I think with that, I'd like to invite all our presenters to come back on video. I think we can potentially turn up screen sharing and take a few more questions. I want to start with one that's related to Digital X. Mike, we have Kat from DCO in New York, and she's wondering if you've already mapped or partnered with other accelerators from other entities. And I'm going to extend the question and say other entities or just other accelerators all around the world, and if that mapping could be made available.
Oh, great question. Yes. We are starting that process and starting to reach out. So if anyone here on this call has done anything there, we'd love to work with you and see what you have. And certainly, someone else also asked about the solutions catalog. Will we be sharing that publicly? So we'd like to share and be open with as many things as we can to help to work with all of the UN agencies here. So thank you so much. Please email me if I'll write my email again if anyone has any mapping already done. But as I said, we won't be launching till April 20th. So, we got a few people full-time on this and really reaching out and trying to connect to others. So if you have a program, please reach out to me too. Thanks.
It's a question that we get very often. Mike, do you have an overview of all the accelerator programs or incubators in the UN and across? So please do share. We'd love to help you disseminate it and share across this community. I'm going to have to say that you guys made my job slightly hard by answering most of the questions already. So I'm going to be cheeky and again, throw the ball back to you and say, did you come across a question that you thought was particularly insightful that you would like to answer for everyone's benefit in plenary? Open question to the three of you.
Yeah, there's a couple there that I didn't get to, and that I think are kind of interesting. And there's two that I would maybe try to address. One which is about how does the digital team, the digital transformation team, work with the IT team? And that is, I mean, that is a very important point. In UNDP, we have a very good partnership with the corporate IT service of the organization. The reality is that where the IT parts of our organizations, they need to be able to control the risk management, the policy elements, the technology, architecture, and maintenance for our corporate systems. But the reality is that out there in our programs at the country level, our teams are actively building digital solutions out there as well, often on behalf of governments, or building something and turning it over to government, or all sorts of different things. So this is exploding right now. And what we've done is that on the internal systems, we work very closely with IT around what are the right sort of the data strategy elements that we need. So we co-implement that together with the IT parts of the organization, as well as some of our policy parts. And so we all have a lot of governance structures that include this element of co-leading on those sides of things. And then for those solutions that are being built out in the hinterland, as it were, it's about creating the right overall policy environment for that, the guiding principles about the way that we approach these things, having principles like the protection of data that's important when it comes to program-facing solutions and things like that. And really trying to put this together, as Guyan was just talking about, creating a set of digital standards as well for the organization that eventually will be in place and essentially kind of compliance oriented. And those are all things that we have to do in partnership with IT. We can't, there's no way we can do it separated. We have to do this in a united way. And then really quickly, another question that was there that I didn't answer, which is really intriguing, is, are digital solutions necessarily tech and software enabled? Well, I'm not exactly sure if I've understood what the asker of that question meant, but in our experience, the digital piece is much more than technology and software. If you think about the importance of understanding implications around digital when it comes to this issue of, is our digital systems being applied inclusively? Are there inherent biases in these systems? Has data privacy been ensured? These are all policy issues. They're not technology and software issues. They're policy issues related to those technology solutions. So that's what my answer would be to that question. I mean, there's another question that sometimes comes up about, well, do you guys also do social innovation, not just digital innovation? And the answer to that question is yes, of course. UNDP, through its different networks and accelerated labs and everything, we do a lot of social innovation as well. But we do have a digital strategy because we believe the digital technology areas are among the most important out there.
Thanks for that, Rob. I saw another question for Mike that I really liked. Mike, I think you just answered it. It was on indicators to assess readiness for scale. Would you care to share in plenary what your answer to that question was?
Sure, yeah. So on one end, it's a technical review to make sure that a product is safe to use. It can handle a lot of users, data privacy, all these different issues, right? And then on another, I'll just share my screen very rapidly. This is the link that I shared. This is a ready for scale canvas, which has different questions around impact, product market fit, product maturity, sustainability, how long of a runway of funding does this have, these type of things. And then the second part is around scale. So what do they even mean by scale? How they've grown within one country? Have they expanded to new countries? Is there government adoption? Who are their champions? And then, is it actually someone who's committed? Is it in discussion? Is it a wish list? So we really try to poke holes and really understand clearly how ready is this. Sometimes it takes some digging in to do this, but it's very useful. So if anyone wants to learn more about this, just email me. I'm happy to share. Thank you.
That looks great, Mike. If you're happy to share a version of that, I'd love to make it available. You can always trust me to try and get my grubby little hands on any resources that might be available to others. But if you prefer not to, then you can reach out to you. Guyan, a nice question in the chat that you're currently answering in the Q&A box on strategies to strengthen data literacy and awareness. A really question close to my heart, because I think all the fancy stuff is great and important, but as a system, we might not necessarily be ready for that. What are you doing to empower colleagues to use resources that are available? And then obviously we all know we don't like to use someone else's toothbrush. So how do you encourage them to use resources outside of UNDP that are available rather than developing your own?
Thank you, Anna. I was, in fact, typing a long answer to that question. It's much easier to answer it here. So I would say it's a multi-tier question. First of all, there's a lot of change management efforts happening around the systems that was mentioned around, in the chat there, and there will be communication and some clinics happening around, specifically around these systems on awareness side of things. Also, what we are trying to do with the refresh of the data strategy is to have specific data clinics where a team of a data scientist, data analyst, and a data architect will reach out to each of these teams and trying to understand how some of the business processes can be improved using data. At the same time, we are creating a catalog of services that are available through the UNDP's corporate offer and also available through digital public goods and when it comes to data as well. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, where you can utilize. And through these Data Thursday sessions that we are having in UNDP, we are trying to get more and more practical projects on the ground, so you can get some inspiration from those projects, especially in the areas of real-time monitoring and analysis of our projects. So we are getting those people who are doing those projects into these webinars to explain sometimes not just the success, but the challenges they face on the ground as well, so others can learn from it.
Thank you so much. Not reinventing the wheel, again, music to my ears. Guys, we're out of time, and I think we're also out of questions. I don't think this has ever happened before, that we've had all questions answered live on the chat before, so really appreciate it. I'm going to say I want to introduce a new little tradition in UNIN, and we're going to post this webinar obviously publicly and also add it to our Teams channel. If anyone has questions that come to mind afterwards, feel free to pop them in there. Let's keep the conversation going. Mike, Guyan, and Rob have all been so helpful, and I'm sure they will continue to be open to answering any questions you have or collaborating further. And on that note, I'm going to say thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to learn more about how you're approaching digital transformation, unlike an all of the organization approach. Wishing you guys best of luck. You're welcome to come anytime, share lessons learned and insights, and help others along this journey.
Thank you so much.
With that, wishing everyone a good day. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Yep. Bye.